I was having dinner last night with someone, and they were talking about going to a rodeo and how fun it was to watch cattle wrestling. And I discussed that I'd been to rodeos in the past, and I didn't know that we did this act. And when I saw it for the first time, I was very disturbed by seeing grown men jumping on animals, wrestling to the ground, and tying them up for sport. And I discussed with him, that since the foundation of time, boys have come up with so many ideas to prove their manhood. Just one thing after another, like pulling the wings off bees, jumping out of perfectly good airplanes, and wrestling cattle. And I said, there's no judgment. I'm on the far extreme of sensitivity about how animals are treated, because I don't see animals different from other animals. I don't see cattle different than I see cats. And sadly, or depending on how you want to look at it, I don't really see cats all that different than people as far as how we should treat them and what the rules should be. And having struggled with wanting to be vegetarian most of my life in an unvegetarian world, I've always grappled with the way animals were treated in factories, and when I became a Christian, I thought that getting back to God would be getting back to nature. And I found out very early on in my Christian walk that the two had nothing to do with one another. That in fact, because Jesus told Peter that they could eat anything they wanted, basically, that was like this big green light for us to do whatever we want to the animal kingdom, because we have dominion over them. And I was telling this person that this is something I've struggled with as a Christian, because I've often wondered, why does God tell us in the New Testament that it's acceptable for us to eat meat, when I don't personally believe we have to survive? And now it's gotten to such a point where, animals are so mistreated that it's a completely different issue. And I said, this is something that I've always struggled with, and that the only answer I can think of is that we in our flesh are violent. And we in our flesh want to commit murder. And maybe if we're killing animals, and now in our society, the way our food industry is handled, torturing animals before we kill them, maybe we won't be as bad to our children. Seriously, I really believe that that's the only logical answer, based on the entirety of Scripture, why God didn't say go back to eating like you would have in the garden. Because like the Seventh-day Adventists believe we're supposed to eat like we were supposed to eat in the garden, that it was only a short period of time after the flood that we ate meat, but we were supposed to go back. And just because God said it was acceptable doesn't mean it was profitable. And I think that's a very valid argument, but believe it or not, this is all just leading into something that has nothing to do with food, by the way. But it does have something to do with the nature of violence in man. That we have to hunt, we have to kill, we have to torture, we get something out of it. And if, TV land can judge me all they want, no one in the room is going to judge me. Everybody knows I like violent movies, and, this is just how we are. It's just our nature, and something very strange has occurred recently in my life. My experience is, there's an old Native American proverb that says, if you, and I guess someone else will write me and say it was an old Japanese proverb. Someone else will write me and say it was actually a Hebrew proverb. It's in the Talmud. Well, let's just say there's an old proverb that says if you sit at your window long enough and stare at the river, sooner or later you'll see all your enemies floating by. And which means that if you stay where you're at and do what you do, sooner or later you'll see the movement or the leaving or simply the demise of all the people that have been against you. And I think that the Bible says something a little bit more clear in that God will bring all things into light. That the reason why we're not supposed to judge and the reason why we're not supposed to get vengeance is because God will bring all things into light. And usually when we read that, we see it as meaning something like God is going to bring it into light when people die and in judgment, and they're either going to be crying a lot before God before they get into heaven, or He's going to be casting them into eternal fire. But I am more than convinced that when God sees fit in this life, He will bring the sin of others or ourselves into light. That He will bring it into light when it is time for Him to be heard and understood. And again, I think that that's why we get to kill animals, so we don't take our vengeance out on people. I really can't see any other reason if a person truly believes we do not need to live on animal protein to survive, why we still do that in our society, except that's what the heathen do, or why would God condone it, except maybe we get it out of our system, that maybe, you know, we're less likely to beat our wives if we have a Big Mac. And I'm serious. That is the only thing I can think of. I've thought about it. I've thought about it for 28 years. I've thought about it. And that's the only answer I could come up with. And it's a good answer. That because of the nature of our being, we have to continue to kill things to exist in a somewhat controllable fashion. That, you know, the animal sacrifices stopped. And then Jesus came, but maybe we still need to slaughter something, or else we'd be slaughtering each other because of our sinful nature. That's my 2 cents. And in agreement with my 2 cents about the nature of man, and by the way, I don't think that makes us bad people. If that is true, I'll sleep just fine with that, and I'll buy everybody a Big Mac. I'll say, you know, if that's the voice of the Lord saying, that's why it's good for you, that's why it's good for you to continue this practice, no matter how it looks in the factories, I'm good. God's boss, man. He's right, I'm wrong. Let God be true and every Paisley a liar. But looking at the nature of man, there's one thing that I can't help but see over and over again, is how incredibly hateful we are. You know, from people we love, how easy it is to be hurtful, to snap, to say terrible things or make inappropriate jokes. You know what I'm saying? How easy that is for us to do. But to the things we don't like, how easy it is to, you know, to go from 1 to 10 to 10. And I hate that, and I loathe that, and I can't stand it. You know, how quick and easy that is for us to do. And in my 7 years of this ministry, I have been on the receiving end of so much of capital letter hate, you know, that I'm amazed because, again, it's not like I haven't met me. It's not like I don't know what I'm like. It's not like I don't know what I provoke. But I'm still always amazed at what people come back with. And you guys here, and again, you know, the nice people that watch these videos, have heard me say in the past, Why is it when I get hate mail about what a bad Christian I am by my horrible representation of Christ, do they always poke fun at how fat I am? Why do they always include that in a letter? How many times have I said that? I mean, you've been around here, you know, for the last, what, 6 months or whatever. You've heard me say it a lot. You know that's a hot spot. Well, we've moved on. I must have lost some weight. I'm looking pretty good because we don't go to fat jokes anymore. We have a whole new attack. A whole new attack that I have never experienced in my life. Now, I want to say that again, that I've never experienced in my life. What could be left of all the things I've said I've been picked on and bullied about throughout my life? What is the one thing I've barely had touch my life to a point where it was intentional to try to hurt me? I mean, what's left? When I started this ministry, people, you know, I was wearing jeans and t-shirts, and people were writing me saying, you know, Christians were writing me saying, you know, you're a fucking queer. You know, people writing stuff like this, saying, you know, such horrible things to me. Okay, so they were picking on the gay thing, and then I came out and I'm wearing evening gowns, and they're calling me fat. You know, what's left? You know, what's left to pick on? And it's really funny because I'm from well, we call it Los Angeles, California. By the way, no one's from Los Angeles. Los Angeles is the icky part. You know, we don't come from there. We say we're from LA, and we mean we're from Hollywood, you know, which is where my heart's from, or we're from the Valley, which is where I'm really from, which is like, and I'm from the rich part of the Valley, the rich Jewish part of the Valley, you know, where we lived in the better area than Michael Jackson lived in, you know. So that's what we call, when we say we're from LA, we mean we're from the part of the West Coast that's in California that runs that side of the country. That's what LA means. LA does not mean Los Angeles. LA does not mean Los Angeles. We heard a pop. Is everybody okay? Okay, we're all good. So, yeah, I'm going to melt this. I'm not going to say what it is just yet. But I want to be clear that we use Jesus as an example for the type of abuse we received. When we're not listened to, when we tell someone the truth of the Lord, people say back, well, it happened to Jesus all the time. He said a prophet is not without honor except in his own home, in his own country. You know, so we see Jesus as the example of the Christian. I see me in my struggles as an example of the world. Not me being the example, but what I experience. So when I go to Carl's Jr. before a show, wearing a dress and combat boots, and people snicker at me, I see that that anybody who looks weird to these people will get snickered at. Yeah, I'm the extreme of that, but that's what I see, and that tells me something. That speaks to me. So I see Christians, you know, writing me hate mail as an example of how they look at whatever they're hating about me in all aspects of life. I don't see it as personal. I mean, I've taken a lot of guff, so I feel bad, and it hurts my feelings. And yeah, I went home crying one night because someone called me fat at a show. But generally speaking, it isn't personal, even though it's directed at me over and over and over and over again. I've put myself out there to find out what's being hurled at all of humanity, not just me. So I may be an extreme, so I get a lot more than a lot of people get in a concentrated period of time. But I don't think the negative responses I've received are solely about me. I think they're reflective of what I'm doing, what the person's doing, how people perceive things, and how the world is today. And what I know about Satan and the way Satan operates on planet Earth, which is his kingdom, and what I know about Bible prophecy, about the end of times, and end times are not last days. I'm glad I get to say